So we'll probably just give it another minute or two to see if Sumesh can join us. And it's understandable if he can't, because it's freaking 2 o'clock in the morning in India. So, even if Sumesh does come along, parts of the training that we're going to talk about today are kind of a review from some of the things that you've seen. We're just going to put it together in a slightly different way. So if you find something in here and you're like, Hannah, I already know that, then you can let me know in the feedback that this is too much review. But I think it's the things that are review, I think, are crazy important. So you were both at the procrastination class last month, right? Any reflections on the kind of the cycle itself? Have you had an opportunity to teach it?
I've definitely been trying to listen in for those key terms and sentences from clients. Yeah, like I said, I've definitely got a new one that is right in that crisis spot right now. And I'm like, okay, we're gonna deal with the very major life-threatening things, and then we're gonna sit down and we're gonna talk about all of this. So kind of planning how that's gonna work, because she's a little scattered right now. She's just not really following anything that's said. So I want it to be in a spot where she's maybe moved into a new cycle, a new part of the cycle.
Right. Good.
Because
precisely,
she's not even touching half of what's going on at this point. So
it would be weird if they did, right? They would be odd if, when they're in active crisis, if they were like super tuned in, like that'd be like, wait, what's going on, right? And we'll talk more about that. That's why this class is a good one to follow the procrastination and crisis cycles, because we're going to dig pretty deeply into those crisis states. So, Joylene, anything that you've observed, if anything? Oh, you're muted, Joylene.
Sorry.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, not a whole lot. I've had a few home visits, but they've been kind of different. It's myself who's kind of going through crisis right now. So some things have been blurred, just had 3 deaths recently, and my stepmom and my father-in-law both within minutes of each other. So, yeah.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
And a funeral to go to this, tomorrow. So yeah. So I'm here because I wanted to continue on with the things, but also a lot is processing in my mind right now.
So before we continue on, Joylene, is there anything, how can we support you today?
Just be there if I need anything,
Okay.
This kind of helps. I'm working half day just for this meeting because I enjoy your meetings and I gather a lot of information from them. And then the day and next week I'm taking off. So.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that. I'm super glad you're taking some time.
Thank you.
Yeah. If you need to leave during the class, if we need to adjust, you need to go camera off, I'm a big fan of camera on, but whatever you need. So
thank you.
You bet. So let's oh shoot, my apologies. So as always, I like to do a land acknowledgement. I am fortunate to be able to live, work, and learn on Kalapuya land, and I like to recognize that we are all on native land. I think we're all on Kalapuya land, actually. Yeah, if you're anywhere around, yeah. So I always like to appreciate that. Okay, so because you guys have been through classes before, before I jump into the slides, is there anything that what comments do you have? What questions do you have before I just jump on in? I'm
just excited. Just reading the kind of synopsis about, decision making during times of crisis and under that pressure, I think it will be very beneficial for a lot of the people I work with, because they are having to make big life altering decisions, and they are in one of the most turbulent times of their life. And so whatever I can do to support them to make good decisions and not just fast decisions,
That's
it's going to be good. It's going to be great. I'm excited.
Good deal. Okay, so let's jump into the slides before I just start like spitballing. So that's why I have slides. One moment while I get those. Just get to look at my face, do thinking things for a minute. Sorry. Okay, so yeah, breathing underwater is kind of the way that it feels to try to make decisions under pressure. So that's why I've titled it that. Here, as always, is the intellectual property clause. Basically, anything that we talk about and the companion notes that come along are yours to use for your own development and in service of folks that you are working with in kind of under the umbrella of the tools that you're already using. But if you are interested in seeking compensation or contracts, then we have a separate conversation about licensing. So this class is, of course, for you both do some very similar jobs for basically anybody connected to their community, but it is also for you, right? I don't want there ever to be a separation, like I can only use this tool on my client. This is absolutely for you as well. So core values at Pacific Stoa is that we teach others to trust ourselves. Nope, we teach others to trust themselves. We respect others' inherent resilience, and we foster autonomy and self-reliance. Purpose of this class is to give you at least one tool. So there's going to be basically 2 and 2. There's going to be 2 concepts that are sort of back end for you, and then 2 tools or concepts that you can teach. But I do want to make you could teach anything that we talk about. So if you feel like teaching a back end tool to somebody, knock yourself out. So there's no limits to that. It's just that they're sort of like curated for in different ways. These tools are designed to, the thing we talk about kind of all the time, building resilience and build awareness without shame or judgment. I'm going to go back a little bit. I apologize. Of trigger warning for animal violence. Boy, that was not great. Sorry about that, everybody. So we've all seen this picture, right? I use this picture kind of a lot, right? Have you seen this, Jessica? Harper? I don't want to call you Jessica ever. It feels really weird.
Not that I remember seeing this picture.
Okay. So I use this picture a lot. Joylene, I know that you've seen this one. To kind of illustrate the primal sort of understanding of what crisis looks like, crisis, stress, anxiety, pressure looks like to our brains. So in the middle of the picture is a hyena. This hyena is probably in the last minutes of their life. And the hyena is surrounded by 5 wild dogs. And so we've talked a lot about and we will continue to talk about things like choice and consent. There's not a lot of consent happening here. There's not a lot of choices. Even things like the mud bank behind the hyena is removing choices. So this is what our brains feel like when we're under pressure. Our brains don't know any difference between an immediate threat and limited control. So there's no difference between, if I feel like I have limited control over my environment, my brain processes that as a threat, even if it's just Tank, who's right here, by the way. Even if it's just Tank, and I need to get going, and Tank has knocked something over because he's a blind cat, and then I have a choices reduced, right? Is this life threatening? No, it's not. But my brain still processes oh my God, I got to take care of this right now. So there's no difference between limited control and immediate threat to our brains. So when we come at this from the helper's perspective, from the coach perspective, from the navigator's perspective, and we hear someone either really say it, or we get those signals like we talked about, those indicators from last month's class, I feel like my life is out of control. We typically come at them with, let's work on your SMART goals. And we could talk for hours about how much I don't like SMART goals. Focus on what's important. That's prioritizing, right? Read this book, stick to your budget or stick to your plan, work harder, right? These are all of the things that we come at them with. Is this sounding consistent? And this is, the problem with this is it's very, very, very consistent that any attempts at that kind of correction or direction will be perceived as further removal of their control, because that's what it is, right? Instructing, directing, and correcting destroys autonomy. So then we come back at them with, well, that's your choice, right? We're just trying to help. I thought you were serious about changing. We're getting some shame and judgment in here. You're not being accountable. I can't help you if you don't take responsibility. So then we're getting into some blame, right? So, but this is the natural and logical outcome if we come at them with info dumping, resource dumping, that kind of a thing. Even if they asked for it, they are going to rebel. Oops. Okay, Hannah's not doing very good with the scroll wheel today. So how to actually help when we hear someone say, I feel like my life is out of control, we're seeing those indicators, as we can just reflect. Sounds like everything is weighing on you, right? Tell me about another time in your life that you felt like this. How did you survive that? What would you like to work on? Is it okay if I share something with you? Is this a good time to talk? And those on the right-hand side are talking about like definitely inserting more control, more choice for the people that we're working with. So we're changing our icons up a little bit. So this little bookmark thing is going to be kind of the indicators for you. So indicators used to be kind of that squabble, changing things up for 2022. So I want you to kind of be on the lookout for your own writing reflex. And this comes to us from the world of motivational interviewing. And the writing reflex, the way to know if you're employing this is that it is a strong and immediate urge to tell others what to do. That sounds a little rougher than it is. Like, it is the urgency to fix. It comes from the motivation to help, protect, serve. We're trying to help. It's motivated by beautiful things, but it is that I feel it in my chest, like that, whoosh, I gotta help. I gotta hear all of these things, right? We're trying to stop the pain. We're trying to stop the bleeding, right? That sort of immediate and impulsive urge to direct. This is actually less an indicator of their stress and more an indicator of our own, right? And the other person will shut down. So that's one way to notice that you have been using the writing reflex, is that the other person just stops. They shut down. Remember, we talked about apathy, like they go into that protective mode where they just shut down. They don't care. They stop showing up, right? That is one of the good indicators after the fact, unfortunately, that you have been employing the writing reflex. So when I'm training coaches a little more one-on-one, I get pushback on this because it feels life or death that you don't understand, Hannah. These people are in immediate crisis and I got to do this and this and this and this and this. What does that sound like? I'll drink my tea while you think. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm immediately flashing back to a couple days ago. Maybe it was last week. God, it's a blur. But yeah, hearing somebody in crisis and very obviously making, hints towards self-harm and suicidal ideation. And of course, I'm lucky that we have a crisis team here. And so that is an outlet for me. But yeah, I was guilty of all of this, trying to say, you're so strong and you can beat anything that life throws at you. And you've survived every hard thing you've gone through till this point. And a lot of it is just, time crunch of like, I have another appointment I have to get to. But the reality is that just kind of coated over top of what she's feeling. It didn't fix any of the problems or relieve any of what the
Right.
stress she's dealing with. But it made me feel a little bit better,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Julie, what have you seen?
Yeah. The other thing when you were just saying, what does this sound like and stuff, to me, automatically it kind of comes into mind as you're hearing from your parents. You did something or they wanted something, and so they're saying, well, do this, or this is an idea, this is what happened and stuff. And so in a way, you're not really being listened to or being able to make your own choices. And so, we automatically shut down and stuff, and because it didn't come from us, or it wasn't helping us to bring a tool out of our own toolbox to help us to, learn so yeah. If that makes
Precisely. No, it makes perfect sense. So it can feel like we are parented, which means we're being treated as children, which we are allowed to feel resentful for. And I don't care what kind of relationship this is. This could be a romantic relationship, a parent adult child relationship. It took my mom many years into my adulthood for her to treat my brother and I as adults. And now that I am a mom of an adult child, I get it. Like, it's real hard to stop seeing that kid as an 8-year-old, right? But yeah, it feels disrespectful. It feels like, even if I just asked you to tell me what to do, if you tell me what to do, I still get to feel resentful, right? Like, you're still treating me like a child. So I want to make it super, super clear that I don't want you to fight against the writing reflex. I want you to do just as you've done with everything else. I want you to notice that it's there and look for the patterns around it. Like we talked about the wild animal and the scientist. I want you to kind of reflect yourself on, like, when I'm using that writing reflex, when that thing kicks in, it is crazy fast and it's really undeniable. And it is motivated by lovely, lovely things, right? There are other ways to accomplish what we want out of that, but it is an indicator of our own crisis. And we don't make good choices in crisis any better than anybody else does. So if someone's already in crisis and we hit them with this writing reflex, it's just going to kick that crisis over faster and faster and faster. So we'll talk more about this probably over the years, but we can slow them down by reflections, both our own internal reflections and reframing what we say to be more reflective, which we're going to talk about. Oops, man, I have a hard time with that track wheel today. So the consent continuum is something that we've talked about and something that we will continue to talk about, because I think that this is probably one of the most important tools that we have as helpers. You guys have both seen the consent continuum once or twice? More than once, Joylene?
I believe so.
Joylene, you want to teach this part?
No. Go for it.
Harper, you want to teach this part? Harper, are you frozen? Oh, she may be frozen. Okay.
I might
Go
be, but I hopefully not.
Your audio isn't, but your video is.
Yeah.
It'll catch up. Okay, so the consent continuum we will run through, just because I think that it is really, really valuable and important to talk about. But consent is freely given with the full knowledge of our consequences, processes, risks, and values. You take one step off of consent and we are into compliance, and that is where consent is given but reluctantly, and the person is engaging in an activity or action in order to please or not disappoint. Then we get to pressure, which is where we are still, someone is still giving permission, but giving consent, but even more reluctantly. And the person is engaging in activity or action through the use of bribery, punishment, shame, judgment, manipulation, implied threats, or a sense of duty. Dude, you gotta lay down, bro. Take one more step off of consent and we get to coercion, where permission is definitely not given and the person engages in an activity or action through the use of bribery or punishment, direct threats. Jessica, are you still there?
Yes, I was trying to start and stop my video to see if it helped at all, but
It seems to have, and then Joylene bopped off, so okay.
oh
Hopefully
no,
she'll- right as you was like, oh dear, what have I done? There she is, hooray. Coercion is where permission is not given and it engages, a person is engaging in activity and action through the use of bribery or punishment, direct threats of physical violence or harm. And then force, which is kind of the waterboarding. I want you to stay right where you are, dude. I'm using force on Tank right now. Permission is not given. And the person engages in an activity or action through the use of physical violence or harm. Consent is really important to cats, but it's not anybody else's but their own. I don't want you over here. Do you want to get down? Okay, hold on, guys. 1 second. Super professional. Come here, bud. You guys want to see his face?
Yes.
Here's my ginger.
Oh.
Aw, Tank.
hi dang.
Yes.
Here you go, buddy. Here you go. Why don't you go get some water? When you're old and blind, you can just do whatever you want.
Yeah. Cats seem to think that half the time anyways.
Very true. He'll be right back up here in
Yes.
3 seconds anyways. He just marches around at full speed and he's almost totally blind. Okay, anyways, back to work. Okay, so the reason that this is taught in like social work and especially in places where people are meeting with a social worker or a navigator or an educator and they are not, it was not their choice to be there. This is really, really important. So of these 5 bubbles, the work that you do, and we're not going to throw our agencies under the bus, it's kind of a systemic thing. It's not just your agency, it's kind of all of them. Where do you feel like most of the tools that you have, most of the expectations that you have for you and for the people that you work with, which bubble do you feel like you fall in?
So I would say the clients that I work with, because they're directly referred from DHS, the DHS bubble is definitely coercion or force. I mean, there's no autonomy in that part. This is, court ordered. I mean, I guess you have the decision of saying, okay, take my children and I'm done. And so then I feel like when we get the initial referral and we're meeting with people, it's definitely still probably in that pressure and compliance part where they feel like my caseworker says I have to do this. I'm gonna do this just to get them off my back. And we really in that first meeting try to let them know, hey, this is all voluntary. You don't have to work with us. I'm just here to be on your team. I want to help you to do all of these things that you need to do to check these boxes and to gain the knowledge you need to successfully parent your children. But I still feel like there's a bit of pressure or compliance kind of mixed in with it. I can say it's all voluntary and you don't have to work with me. But if they go back to their caseworker and say, yeah, I decided not to do that.
I don't like Jessica.
They're still going to feel like, they are going to be punished or shamed or, there are implied threats. So I feel like as much as I want to And I feel like I can build a relationship with some people where they understand, like, you know, you have the consent to do this, but I'd still, it's always that like shadow over them of, you do this or there's consequences.
Yes. What do you think, Darlene?
And for me, I feel like our families are down at the other end because it is Head Start, you know, they, you know, signed their child up because they wanted their child in Head Start, but also with them being signed up in it, Head Start, you know, part of the program is you have to do these home visits and all this other stuff, you know, with the teachers and with the family educators. So I feel like it falls in the range of from consent, you know, to pressure, you know, so.
Good. Yeah, and next month at this class, we're gonna depart a little bit. We're gonna talk about policy, systems, process sort of stuff. We're gonna be talking about the difference between compliance training and competency training, which is a little unusual for our structure, but I think it's important to kind of talk about that, like within the umbrella of your agency, you are compelled, and then you are compelling others. So how can we make this a little bit more about competency, like doing things well, and what to expect out of these two different kinds of training philosophies, competency and compliance. So thank you both for your feedback. I kind of was curious about where you thought that you would fall. So good. So as you move from left to right, of course, that rebellion and resentment that comes up, and it should. That is a normal functioning brain. And as you move from left to right, what comes down is the ability for people to make long-term positive behavior change, stay motivated, and it reduces their choice. And of course, as we've been talking about, reduces their autonomy. So we call this the choice continuum. And this is choice and consent is something that we talk about a bunch. Also, as you move from left to right, the opportunity for trauma to be a part of this conversation as well, especially as you get over towards the force. All right, so identifying when someone is under pressure. So do you guys know the Hairbrush Story? I'll tell it to you anyways. Back when I was still working through the nonprofits for folks who are at or near homelessness, I've been working with a mom who I think she had 3 kids, husband was in jail, she just lost her job. She was days away from homelessness, like, and this was in the before times, not eviction notice on the door, but sheriff showing up at the house kind of homelessness. And we had a scheduled meeting. She shows up, she walks in the door, and she's like a tornado. She's like, I can't believe all this keeps happening. What had happened was that morning her hairbrush had broken. My hairbrush broke today. Oh my God, I can't believe this shit keeps happening to me. It was my only hairbrush. That's why my hair looks like this. It's my favorite hairbrush. I've had it for years. And she's going on for 20, 25 minutes about her hairbrush. And I'm listening, right? So you could look at that from the outside, from the executive director's perspective, and you could say, you've got a 45-minute to 1 hour meeting, and you spent 25 minutes of it talking about a hairbrush. Hannah should have roped that conversation in sooner. And my hearty disagreement with that is nope, because she is responding to that. It looks disproportional from the outside, right? So she even said, I shouldn't be talking about this. I know this is stupid, right? So she understands that she's flipping out, but this broken hairbrush she's done. She's had it. So when they tell you, I'm really stressed out, I'm really overwhelmed, just listen, right? Because sometimes they tell you just flat out, and sometimes they don't, right? Sometimes we have to look for it. We have to look for those indicators. So those inappropriate reactions and behaviors, to her, that was a totally appropriate reaction. her spending 25-minute ranting about all this stuff that's happened to her in the last 10 years of her life, that's an appropriate reaction. So that's why I didn't shut it down. That's why I didn't tell her, like, this is not appropriate. Why are we talking about this? That is not trauma informed. It's going to look from the outside like their priorities are out of order, right? If you look at that from the executive director position, like that's exactly what that looks like. It's going to look like avoidance and procrastination, which we talked about last time. And that is hyper-focused. Remember, we talked about like avoidance is kind of this, I'm focusing on this thing right now at the exclusion of everything else. She was focused on a broken hairbrush at the exclusion of everything else. And that apathy or shutdown, that protective state where they just go into sort of that, they're basically just non-functional. So when you understand that your person is going through some stress, trauma, crisis, you can just reflect that back to them. It sounds like you're under a lot of pressure. That sounds really stupid. It sounds like, duh, yeah, I'm under a lot of pressure. I don't think I've ever had anybody actually say that back to me, because what this does is it helps them feel heard. Like they see that, like, I'm not telling her that her hairbrush, ranting about a hairbrush for 25 minutes is a stupid thing. I'm telling her this is legitimate. Like, this is a lot of stress. Tell me more about that, which is kind of the opposite of what we would expect. We want them to kind of like, let's get it all out. Let's talk about it. This is scary on our end of things, not just around time constraints, but around the courage to ask for more. So this takes some of our own resilience as well. Tell me about another time in your life that you felt like this. I think it was Harper a little bit ago who talked about that, like bringing up like you've survived other things before. But instead of using that as a statement, we're asking this as a question. Tell me about another time in your life that you felt like this. And would it be okay with you if I shared a tool that might help? Transitions we've talked about before between observation of where they are, recognition of that, consent, and then sharing a tool. I don't want to make that sound like it's way more chunky than it needs to be. But you could say, it sounds like you're under a lot of pressure. Would it be okay if I shared a tool with you that I've seen help other people? And if they say no, if they withdraw consent, then don't share it. And we'll talk a little bit more. So the tools that we're going to talk about that you can share, because what we've talked about so far is sort of back end. The two things that are easily teachable could be prevention or recovery steps. And then at the end of the class, if we have time, we'll talk about interventions that you could do right at the moment of that crisis. All right, so here's my teach only once you have consent. The tool to teach that I really, really enjoy is something called the window of tolerance. And this, of course, is not my invention. This has been part of psychology for decades. So by teaching concepts like the window of tolerance, we let people know that they are not alone and they're not crazy, that entire fields of study and books have been written about this exact thing. The pushback I occasionally get is, why would I teach them this complex psychological concept? Is because we don't need to undervalue our person's intelligence. They're probably capable of understanding this. And by teaching the complexity of it, even if that's something that normally has been reserved for our own back-end education, for my education, it respects their intelligence and it normalizes or names what they are dealing with, so they don't feel like they're the only person in the world dealing with this. So we have what's called a window of tolerance. And within that window, if we are functioning within it, we can process the world around us, make good choices based on logic and reason and emotion, because we always do. And we feel safe and secure. Like we can have our heads on a swivel, we can kind of process things at a good speed. The input is coming at us in such a way that we can process and then take action in a comfortable way. Sorry, dude. This is our ideal baseline. Outside of this window, we are unable to process the world around us. Logic and reason centers of our brain shut down. Think about that hyena. That hyena does not need to think about, I don't know, trajectories of things. That hyena does not need to do math. That hyena needs to not be using the logic and reason centers of its brain and just react. Outside of the window of tolerance, we feel unsafe and insecure. And for many of us, and I don't care how much a person makes every year, what their living situation is, or what kind of car they drive, many of us are at this baseline. This is their normal. I apologize, I have not been keeping track of time. Let's see how we're doing here. So as the window shrinks and we are pushed outside of our window of tolerance, we get into either hyper or hypo arousal. So that window is shrinking around us and we cannot function. In hyper arousal, this is the fight or flight. This is where we're getting some active, usually pretty visible behaviors. The increased sensitivity to stimulus. People are jumpy, highly reactive, disorganized, and fractured. Here's those indicators again that we talked about last time. I feel like I'm drowning. I don't know what to do next. I feel like I'm spinning my wheels. I keep trying and nothing ever changes. We're fucked. I don't know what I'm doing. Everything is out of control. And I talk about being in a never-ending cycle. This is where we're going to see that I function better under pressure, where they're just making fast decisions. And this is called a hot state, which we're going to talk about. Hypoarousal, and this is the freeze. So this is what we would talked about last time is apathy, and this is decreased physical mobility, the numbing of emotions or sensations. In person, their aspect will be kind of flat, so they're like no facial expression. They may come to the appointment or they may not. And if they're there, they're just sort of sit there, they're inert. They are shut down. They've got to that protective state. And like we talked about apathy, and this hypoarousal is a protective state. It is not a choice. It is meant to protect us. And this apathy. This is the who cares? What's the point? Who gives a shit? It doesn't matter. Right? Completely shut down. Also kind of a hot state. So the causes of this kind of these hyperarousal states, trauma, extreme stress, feeling unsafe, and notice I'm saying feeling unsafe. Doesn't matter if their actual safety is at risk, and some mental health concerns, of course, which result in the hypoarousal, fight, flight, or freeze, mental health concerns, disproportionate reactions, and those disproportionate reactions, those quote unquote bad choices, can lead to more trauma, extreme stress, being unsafe, and mental health concerns. So it works itself into a tight little cycle here. So let's pause here. Yeah, did you have a thought, Jessica? Okay, let's take about a 4-minute break. When we come back, I'd like to hear from each of you about either a time that you have observed someone or yourself outside the window of tolerance, like hyperarousal, or like if you have a thought in your mind of like who would benefit from knowing the window of tolerance. So let's take about 4 minutes. Is that okay? Okay. have you. You're a big butt head, but I love you. Welcome, Jolene. What observations do you have so far?
I'm back.
Good.
I feel
I don't
like
know.
those are
What?
good for the, those are good analogies and stuff, so that you did. And I think a lot of times we might be what I've seen people in both states, but I think a lot of times it's more of the hyper stage than the hypo.
Yeah. Or it can toggle back and forth, right?
Yeah.
Day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute. So we're not stuck in one, but yeah, that's important to kind of realize that 1 minute they can be super agitated, the next minute they can shut down. So yeah.
Yeah.
Wait for Harper. Okay. Come back, Harper. She's in the middle of a busy resource center, so she might have gotten pulled away with many distractions that they have there. So, okay, so let's carry on. I'm going to say that just to make her come back. All right then.
Okay, I am back. I don't know if my video is
Okay.
working or not.
Your video isn't, but can you see and hear us?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, you have a mask on. Okay, good. All right. So come with me to a gas station. It's late at night. You pull up to the gas station because you forgot about getting gas. It's not about procrastination though. You pull up to the gas station and you can see the traffic is kind of backed up, but there's sort of like people are rubbernecking and like there seems to be some sort of a commotion happening around the pumps. And then you notice that there's a guy out of his vehicle. And he is agitated. He's screaming and yelling. He's throwing cans of oil, and he is in short order stripping. And he proceeds to urinate on the gas pumps. He's yelling. You can't really tell what he's yelling, but our naked friend here is clearly he's in which state?
He's in the hyper stage.
Yeah, he's fight or flight, right? Yeah. He is in reactive hyper arousal. So let's say you're a good person. You're going to try to calm this. You've identified that he's in hyper arousal to yourself. So let's say you walk up to this extremely angry naked man and you ask something like, "Hey, buddy, seems like your behavior is not proportional to this situation." What do you think his response would be?
He's going to say, "You think not?" It's not going to help him.
No. You might get punched in the face, so please don't actually do this. But would he at that moment feel justified in his behavior?
I think he probably would, because it's just gonna, I feel like saying it that way, it's just gonna aggravate the situation, and he's gonna say, well, I'm gonna show you,
Yes,
what's not
this is
proportional.
not proportional. I'll show you proportional, right? So he absolutely probably feels justified in reacting the way that he is, because again, to him, whatever slight has happened, his behavior is proportional to that. So what we have, especially when we're talking about things like resilience, is that the whatever it was feels more dangerous than it looks like it is from the outside. A broken hairbrush is a great example of that, right? Like, or if you've had a flat tire ruin your whole day, right? Like, is a flat tire really like that? But no, not really, right? I can change a flat tire in 8 minutes now. So, I mean, really, it's not that big of a, but it feels that big of a deal. So we are going to react as if it's that big of a deal. So what we try to do typically is we try to respond to that reaction, right? We're trying to respond to naked guy throwing windshield wiper blades, right? But what we should probably be doing for ourselves and for others is altering the way that we're perceiving things, or how much things feel like they hurt. And that is, of course, broken record, resilience, right? Like adjusting the way that, and automatically it comes down again. So we're going to talk about, so the window of tolerance is the first thing that I would recommend practicing and teaching, but this is a good second. So you can teach the window of tolerance, you can go right into hot states. So again, teach only if you have consent. So the hot state reality check, by teaching this kind of tool, we are teaching a way to have very, very, very small interventions that allow them to do something. Because sometimes like it feels like, well, I'm not doing anything, but this is a small, we're asking them to do something that's really, really small. We're not asking them to change their lives in any way, but the intervention we'll talk about is fairly low risk and very small, which makes it easier to do. And again, this is a natural extension of the window of tolerance. So hot state, cold state reality check is a good prevention or recovery tool, as is the window of tolerance. Why did I do that? Okay, so hot states, there are physical hot states. Physical hot states are sexual arousal, intoxication, extreme hunger, extreme thirst, extreme fatigue. They have the same shape that these have, but we're not going to be talking about those because we can impact those less. So we're going to be talking about emotional hot states. These are a few. They're certainly not comprehensive. Anger is one that we're going to pick on just because it's easy to pick on anger. Anger, fear, anxiety, overwhelm, crisis, apathy, shutdown, feeling trapped, cornered, burned out. Call back to the burnout conversations from way back in the day. These hot states all sort of have a similar shape. This bell curve or wave, basically happiness has a bell curve to it. Like there's a peak to our happiness, right? So most of our emotional states are not consistent over time, but these extreme, especially these extremely negatively impactful emotional hot states have this kind of curve. So up here at the tippy top, that's where the guy is urinating on gas pumps, right? Okay, so at that peak, this is where our brains love to make decisions. And by decision, I mean the tone of my voice. I mean my posture, but I also mean how I'm driving and whether or not I'm stripping naked at a gas station. Like all of those choices impact everything around us and ourselves. So our brains really like to make fast decisions at the peak of an emotional state. But down here at our baseline is where our brains make better decisions, right? So this gap, this disconnection between where our brains like to make choices and where our brains make better choices is an important thing to keep in mind. And we don't have a lot of it's called a hot cold empathy gap, but we don't have a lot of tolerance for ourselves. Like there's no way I would ever strip naked and throw quarts of oil at a gas station. Never, right? And then it happens, right? So at the peak of our hot states, we are unaware and we are simply in a reactive mode. That guy was probably tunnel visioned a little bit and was not aware of the cops pulling up. Like everybody else was aware of the cops pulling up because they were lights and sirens, but he didn't hear them, right? My lady with the broken hairbrush, because she was so hyper focused on that hairbrush, she was unaware of kind of everything else in her life. So that unawareness accompanies these reactive hot states. Unawareness means we don't make good decisions. Awareness at our baseline means we make better decisions. We've got our heads on a swivel. Remember, that was inside of our window of tolerance. We can take more things into account and we can process more information and we can think around corners better at our baseline. Is this making sense so far? Okay. Good. Over here, this is what I call the apology zone. That's not an official thing, but that's just what I call it, because we're going to have to apologize to someone. If not ourselves, then the entire gas station. We're going to have to apologize. We're going to the judge at some point, right? Because there's always the apology zone, but this is also where regret, shame, remorse, guilt, depression and anxiety live here too, where we're getting like, this is where, how do you say it? That your butt has to cash the checks that your mouth wrote. That's where this lives. I don't think I said that correctly. So we're going to use this unawareness awareness sort of dichotomy, and we're going to teach a tool that helps them build awareness into their hot states. And what I did was I stole this directly from something called lucid dreaming. Do either of you know what lucid dreaming is? Basically, while you're dreaming, you can start, stop, change, wake up. You can change your dreams. There's a lot of different, like you could spend days and days and days researching lucid dreaming. It's fascinating. Some of it gets a little, start, stop, change, direct, or dreaming. It is the hardest part of this is realizing that you're dreaming, because that's the definition of a dream, is you think it's real. Like you don't know you're dreaming. You just think that you are riding a unicorn. I don't know, flying. Dreaming is itself a lack of awareness that you are dreaming. It feels real. Think about the peak of that hot state. At the peak of that hot state, and again, we're picking on anger because it's easy, but like a person, if you ask that guy, do you feel angry? He's like, no, I'm not angry. He's totally justified, right? Like he's not, right? So the lack of awareness is kind of never mind. Okay, everything feels real and feels justified. So we're going to train first your brain, and then you're going to train other people's brains to run a checklist. And here's the checklist. Am I dreaming? So I'm betting that right now your brain ran a little checklist and your brain came back with yes, no, or maybe. So the idea is that we ask ourselves many, many, many times a day, am I dreaming? 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 And every single time the brain runs a little checklist. What's cool about that is that if you can do that enough, and most people it takes a day or two, if you do that like every hour, let's say, there will be a point while you're dreaming where your brain just all by itself runs the checklist. Am I dreaming? And your brain runs the checklist and goes, oh, I'm dreaming. So then you have the opportunity to employ some of the other lucid dreaming techniques that we are not going to go into. So what we are after is that moment of awareness. So how do we take this lucid dreaming tool and layer it on top of our hot states? That is not the right place. So ignore, am I losing it at the bottom? We'll get to that. Hot state reality check. So we're basically going to employ the same tool and we're going to apply it to whatever the hot state is. So we need to know from the person that we're working with the exact words that they use when they are experiencing that hot state, because nobody experiences a hot state and says to themselves, I am experiencing anger. Nobody does that. I am experiencing a moment of anxiety. Nobody thinks that in their head. Everybody has their own language, and we need to understand what that language is. Whatever language they say is the language that you use. You're going to copy them word for word. I have a dear friend whose hot state reality check is, am I fucking done? I'm done. I'm fucking done. That's when she's done. She's done. Fucking done. I'm done. Right? That's her hot state language. And we don't always walk around knowing what that language is, because it's very, very fast and very, very quiet. So it may take them some time to think about it. Ask them to run this checklist many times a day. That's going to sound a little onerous, but it's really not. It's like every time they see something blue, they can ask themselves that question. When I began this for myself with my anxiety, I did it every hour. I just set an alarm, and it took like literally a day to get it kind of locked in as a script. So mine is this. Mine is, am I freaking out? This is not my anger indicator, of course, but this is my anxiety. So what I did was, for a day or two, I asked myself many, many, many times a day, am I freaking out? Am I freaking out? And every time my brain did a little checklist, and it came back with, no, I'm chill. No, I'm chill. Then I'm sitting in the grocery store parking lot, about to go in and get groceries. And my brain all by itself goes, am I freaking out? And I ran a checklist. I'm like, oh, I'm about to have a panic attack. So rather than having another panic attack in the pickle aisle, I had the panic attack in the car. So I was able to intervene and change my behavior. I caught it sooner than I normally would have, which means that it wasn't as impactful, right? So then I'm not crying in the pickle aisle for some unknown reason, right? So I can just cry in the car, right? So that's mine. Am I freaking out, right? Others, am I pissed off, or am I fucking pissed off? Am I fucking done? So am I losing it? All of these things are indicators that we use. So don't shy away from using the exact language that they're using. I don't care what it is. Am I over it? Am I, yeah, whatever the language is. So then this isn't just anger. This is anxiety, overwhelmed, stressed out, frustrated, burned out. Like, what are some, like, you can call yourself out if you want to. What are some reality check questions that you could use on yourself, since we don't have anybody else to practice on?
Yeah, I definitely felt I identified with the I'm fucking done. Like
I wasn't actually talking about you, but yeah. Fucking done. I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a fantastic indicator. Jolene, did you have an observation?
No, I know that before here years back, I was always on edge, am I going to be able to keep enough food in the fridge for the kids? Am I going to be able to make the rent or be homeless? Because I've been homeless a couple times in my life and stuff. And it always just seemed like every time I was turning around, this bill wasn't paid, or I didn't have enough for this or that and stuff. And so now it's like, as I go through hard times, it's like I've done I guess those reality checks is like, I just, instead of panicking or always being on edge, it's like there's food in the fridge. It's like I go through that checklist. There's food in the fridge. The bills, quit worrying about stuff, just kind of going down the checklist. And it's like, you're okay. Yes, things may be tight, but you're okay because there is food in the fridge. The rent, your lights are on, and stuff. And it's just been that, change. And I know things have gotten a lot tighter for me again lately. And it's just, I keep reminding myself that, I'm here at this point now not
Mhm.
this point when I was losing things.
Good. I love that reframe. And I think that that is a good partner to this. The reframe, I think, is really important, like reminding myself that my life has changed since the last time that I went through something like this. Like I've changed, the world around me changed. Like, so, and kind of listing out the proof, the evidence that things have changed for you, I think is really, really critical. This is a slightly different tool though. This is sort of a preventative thing to begin
Yeah.
to see those times when we are clicking over to that old way. And what we're looking for, and we may not find it quickly, is the actual like language I'm using in my head when I do that, or at least naming it. So like if I can't think of like, then I could try, am I freaking out or am I done? I could try to like just ask myself that many, many times a day. And usually people evolve it. They're like, no, I'm actually using language like something else. Like, am I scared? Am I worried? Am I frustrated? Right? Like that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
for you and for them, take time here to like really, really allow them to name this themselves. If you provide them, or if I provided you with the words to look for, it will not work, Greg, because it's just incredibly individualistic. That's why I'm giving you a bunch of options, so you don't think that you have to go through the world asking yourself, am I fucking done?
Yeah.
Even if that, unless that works for you. So
Yeah.
brilliant. Good.
Yeah.
Thank you,
No.
Jillian.
One of my major tickers is being afraid of heights, and it's like my stomach flip-flops every time. And bridges is a big one, and I just, have to keep reminding myself, the fact that I'm not falling, keep on like, am I falling? No,
There you go. Am I falling? Yeah. Perfect. Yeah.
it's the bridge is sturdy. The bridge is sturdy. I'll get to the other side. Just traffic don't stop in the middle of the bridge, because then I don't cross. But
Then
yeah,
Jillian's stripping naked and peeing on.
yeah.
Yeah, I guess. Please don't do
It's
that.
like you'll have to come and claw me out of that car.
Yeah. I always love that people call that a phobia. I'm like, that is a real thing that we should really be worried about. Like claustrophobia and heights. I'm like, no, that's normal. Isn't that like being a normal human? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Okay, we're doing okay on time. Yeah. All right, so here's our beautiful curve again. This one is somehow curvier. So what I'd like you to be asking is, what do you think you'll notice as you begin to practice this reality check? So here's this, we talked about reflections before, sort of being counteracting that writing reflex. And this is important because they're going to tell you something, maybe. And then that's something you get to follow up with them on. What is it you'll think you'll notice? And you may notice that I use this phrase kind of a lot. What do you think you'll notice? Right. You want them to sit and think, and sometimes they'll say, I don't know. And I don't know is fantastic. It's honest and it's normal. So what they typically do notice is that as they begin to practice this reality check, that the curve begins to flatten, right? We've been all about flattening curves for the last 2 years. Maybe we're not anymore, but like, so if their original hot state was way up here, way up at the tippy top, and now their new hot state is down here, even if that's still a hot state, do you think the choices made at the red arrow are now better or worse or the same than they were before?
Yeah, I think if they're not getting quite to that extreme, they're gonna have less apologizing to do.
Way less apologies on you.
Yeah, they're not gonna go quite to the. Maybe they'll throw a gas can or two, but maybe not strip naked and pee on everything.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or they'll just sit and mutter curse words in their car, right? Like, so yeah, that's we are never going to get rid of these emotional states. I don't know that we should. I don't think that's healthy. But if we can bring them down, bring that gap between hot state and cold state closer together, then we are resetting our perception of how much something hurts, and then immediately resetting our behavior around that. So, what's that called, do you think? Starts with an R? My favorite word.
Resilient.
A+, star for the both of you. So what we've talked about so far, so the window of tolerance and the hot state reality check are great for before or after, right? So prevention or recovery. And they can be the same thing. Like you could be like, when someone is engaging with you a little bit more, you can take the time to teach with them. But if they're in that active state, like broken hairbrush lady was, or gas station guy, that is not the time to teach. You can put that a little way in your head. You can say, okay, we'll come back around to this. Maybe it'll be 5 minutes from now. Maybe it'll be next week, but we will come back to teaching because they're in an acute state, right? So don't try. What I do encourage are micro interventions, which I think we've talked about before when we talked about procrastination and crisis. These micro interventions are meant to provide a little bit of a break for the both of you, and be on the lookout when you're interacting with someone who's in active crisis. Don't fight it, but just be aware that your writing reflex may kick in hard because of that sense of urgency and crisis in you. So these micro interventions are meant to provide just a momentary breath. I call that rescue breath, and plant a seed for them to reflect back on and grow on their own. And as I always say, they will not remember your question. They're just not gonna, they hardly listen to us at all. And that's not a bad thing, is they have so much going on in their own heads. They're only gonna be paying attention to their own response, whether that was a verbal response or their reaction within themselves. So this is one of my favorites. Is this how you live the rest of your life, or is this temporary? And it's important that this be asked as a question or not said as a statement. The other way to say this is okay, I just said it, and then you can ask this as a reflective statement, but be very careful. You can just ask this as, so you feel like you're going to live the rest of your life this way, is a fine way to do it. But if you stick with the question, it's safer. Is this how you live the rest of your life, or is this temporary? It gently pushes back on that crisis brain that tells us that this is how we live, like this is the rest of my life. Like the hyena, his brain was saying that this is how he's going to spend the rest of his life, because it is, right? Like, so there's a part of our brain that is telling us that for good reason. Do not tell them it's temporary. You know, this is temporary, right? You're not going to live the rest of your life this way, because that sounds like suck it up. So be very careful with that. Another one is, you have a lot going on. It would be, Jaylene, you have a lot going on. It would be weird if you were not frustrated, overwhelmed, or stuck right now.
Yes.
And I'm from Hannah's heart to Joylene's heart, right? Like that's important. This is a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you were totally chill, if you're like, yeah, whatever, I'm like, then I get worried about you.
Yeah.
Like, whatever. So this idea is kind of, yeah, you want to use the precise language that they're using. So you have a lot going on. It'd be weird if you weren't fucking done, freaking out, overwhelmed, panicked, whatever the language they're using. Repeat their language. It does normalize their responses and pushes back on the shame and guilt associated with that. Like, I should be doing more. No, you shouldn't. You're fine. It would be weird if you were fully functional right now. Like Jessica, you're a young lady who's had a sheltered life and then is suddenly, we say, living in the gutter. Like, well, shit, that's a lot, man. You have a lot going on. It would be weird if you weren't freaking out. Normal people freak out. It's fine. How much longer can you go on like this? And this, can be said in a way that is really snotty. So I would encourage you to moderate your tone. All of this requires that you have taken a step back from that writing reflex and you are slow, right? Because the writing reflex, just like everything else we've talked about, is fast, fast, fast. This requires you to take a step back and be a little bit slow with this. So how much longer do you think you could go on like this? And people are amazing. They can tolerate shit if it's temporary, right? We are really, really strong physically. We can withstand a lot of, we've all given birth, right? That is horrifying. And we all survived it because it was temporary, right? How much longer can you go on? This is similar to, is this forever? Because it focuses on the time dilation and contraction of crisis. It kind of pokes at it a little bit. I love this question, but this one comes with so much. You got to be careful with this one. You have to have a high level of rapport with whoever you're talking to because of the leverage of humor that this uses and sarcasm. That if they don't have a high level of trust in you, this will absolutely backfire. But I love it. Has anybody in the history of mankind who is dumber than you, with fewer resources than you, figured out something like this? What do you think their normal reaction to this question is? They'll typically laugh, right? Because nobody's expecting this question, right? And it really is a resetting of that perspective. Like, yeah, I'm sure, or yeah. Has anybody in the history of mankind who's dumber than you and less resourceful than you survived something like this, right? Like, yeah, I suppose, right? Using hyperbole and humor to change perspective. How do you suppose they did that? How do you suppose they survived that? Now what are we doing? We're getting into some actionable steps. Well, I suppose that they did their self-care, which I think. And this one is our default. If you got nothing else, if your brain is you're non-functional yourself and you have nothing else that you can offer, if you need to buy yourself some time, you can, and be genuine about this. How can I best support you? Here's our references. So I'm going to drop out of that for a second. I don't know if you noticed, but I've been trying to put less content in so we can have more time, because I've been packing them full of content and then we go for 2 hours and that's not super respectful. So, let me see. I'm trying to think of a good reflective question. What's one thing that surprised you about this class today?
I think usually, you talk about all these things and it never occurs to me the whole time that you, in some part of your brain, are talking about money, because it relates to so much more in life. And normally I'm kind of going, okay, yeah, clients, but also my life. It always reflects back to my own life. But I think right now, it is, I mean, really. But right now I just have such the exact situation where all of this is going to be so useful is so right in front of me. And sometimes it feels overwhelming to broach the topic with somebody when they're going through so much. And I'm now I'm literally in my brain, I need to get her back in here. I need to say this. We're going to do that. I want to hear the language. I'm even remembering back some of the language she used about life is killing me and I'm just going to end it, and going, yes, that's exactly what she's hearing in her mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is just, even that part, and I don't know her well enough, so I won't try it yet, but I'm certain she knows people in her life that are not as, resourceful and intelligent as she is, who have dealt with this exact situation and come out of it ahead. And so really
Mhm.
just, kind of building that rapport enough that I can even phrase it to her like that. I think it's, right now it just seems more tangible to say, like, I can use this right now for this exact person,
Mhm.
and then kind of see the progress. Yeah, so I'm
Yay.
excited.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear what you learned from her in that. I have a caution if you're open to it. See how I just used consent. Um, my caution would be that, like, I heard you say, I'm like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. What does that sound like?
That's my writing reflex.
That's, yeah, and some obligations sneaking in there too. So it's
Yeah.
okay to, and this is a really weird and not fun part for brand new coaches. Like, if I'm training a coach, if they're going for the 40-hour master classes, like, sometimes we have to come to the table like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Like, I have to come to the table with like some fear. Use it though, like, have it slow you down. I'm like, oh, I am here to ask questions and listen. And that's like everything that, like, I just put tools into your head and you want to go use your tools real fast, which I love, that's brilliant. But at the same time, like, I do want to encourage some slowness, because that speed means we're back to the pressure again. So I hear you pressuring yourself. I hear you like having some expectations there. But I love your enthusiasm, so I don't want to squish that. But I also want
Well,
to,
and
like,
normally it's so, like, the idea of starting it is so overwhelming, but like, she's young enough, she's kind of open to, and again, I don't want to tell her what to do, but I think she's open enough to that kind of self-reflection right now, that even just, being able to, if I can tap into what her internal dialogue is telling her when she gets to that point,
mhm.
because I want her to see that she can be resilient, because it immediately goes to, I'm this much overwhelmed. Well, I'm going to end it all, and so definitely will go slow. Um, but it seems more like I've got a good start.
Yeah. The first time you employ a tool or teach something that you haven't taught before, even if we've practiced it, you and I, the first time you teach it or deploy something, it kind of feels like you're going to die. I'm not joking, right? Like, I test tools all the time. You're both grateful, and I'm so grateful that you both be at different sessions, I think, for testing that new big tool. But I test stuff all the time. And every time I'm testing out a new tool, I'm nervous. I'm scared. Like, but that's okay. Use that. Use that. And I like every time, like, I'm going to die. My brain tells me I'm going to die a lot. I'm like, oh, okay, this is important, right? Like, that is my indicator. Yeah, I have anxiety, so my brain tells me I'm all the time about stupid stuff. But yay. Thank you, Harper. Thank you. Darlene, what a surprise as we've been going. You're,
No, I know I've been in your sessions when you've talked about this at different times and stuff, but no, I think it's just, reframing, like how I was discussing how I was going through the checklist, and
mhm.
I was thinking it was fitting along the line, but actually it, more of the bridge analogy was the one, and so just reminding myself, the differences of those angles.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. Is there anything that you need clarification on?
I don't think so. And stuff. To me, I just keep every time you use that hyena analogy, I just keep going. through my mind. I don't know. I keep wanting to rescue the poor guy. Like,
I know.
another
It's a,
wild dog comes along and is like, bark, 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 something's going on over here. So then they all leave in the
run
hind,
off. Yeah.
like, woo,
It's
or
a,
he do a
yeah.
backflip and ends up on the ledge and like, haha, you don't got
Yeah.
me now. So
it's a visceral picture. It's why I use it it's what our brains are doing all the time. Yeah. Thank you. Harper, something you needed clarification on?
For one, that's why I can't watch National Geographic,
Yeah,
because
I'm
the
not-
poor antelope, I just don't, I know it
Can't.
happens. I don't want to see
I'm
it.
the antelope. I'm the antelope.
But as
Yeah.
far as the window of tolerance, it's really just kind of giving them that visual of like, this is where things are okay. You're feeling safe. Everything is steady and calm. And then anything that's outside of that is where you're having that. I liked the visual, but like, I don't know that it really clicks in my brain yet. The getting into the hyper and hypo
Okay.
states definitely makes sense. But somehow my brain, I'm like, I'm trying to visualize being outside of a window, so it doesn't, like, my brain doesn't click with it.
Well, they call it the researchers call it the window of tolerance, but you can adjust that to like any other visual that you like. Like for me, the idea of a box works better, like a three-dimensional box seems to make more sense to my brain. Like here I am comfortably within my Tank's box, but here I am comfortably able to process in my little box. It's just the right size for me. It's not too big. It's Goldilocks box, right? It's not too big. It's not too small. And then as the world increases the pressure on me, or I increase the pressure, that box shrinks and I'm no longer functional when I'm and then I could be standing on top of the box. Maybe that's hyperarousal. And then maybe below the box, and that's hypoarousal. I don't know. So
Yeah,
please adapt this on your own. But I wanted to use the same language that the researchers were using because it's not my tool. So
okay,
yeah,
that makes more sense. Yeah. Thank you.
What other aha moments have you had? Let me ask real quick. Was this too much for going over material we've already gone over before?
it was for me because I feel like the more times you hear it, the more something's gonna click and work for work for you. And so to me, I feel like whether it's review or not, it's helpful information, because you might have not got it the first time, and stuff, and how they say that it takes so many times of hearing something before you remember it.
Yeah.
I feel like it's helpful.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it kind of clicks in a different way to relate kind of one topic to another. And even just the review on like what type of language you're going to hear, how to make sure you're asking for that consent, and how to really kind of reassure people of what they're feeling, but by allowing them to come about that instead of just telling them. So yeah, anything that I had heard before, I thought was good to hear again in this context, so that my brain links it in that way. I also really liked the idea of the lucid dreaming, because like you said, when you're elevated, when you're in that hot state, your brain's not going, oh, like you might feel the physical, especially like you said, if we're going to talk about anger, you're going to feel like my face feels hot and red and my hands are sweating and I'm balling up my fists. But unless you're asking yourself regularly enough, even when you're not dreaming or angry, you're not going to think to do that reality check when you are in that heightened spot. So I like that.
Yeah, because that's what a hot state is, right? That's it's and that's yeah, I think that awareness and awareness dichotomy is really fascinating. So so I want to be respectful of your time. I don't have the companion notes ready to my satisfaction, which means that they're ready. They're just not ready. So by the end of the weekend, so by Monday morning, I'll have to you guys the companion notes and certificates. I'm assuming people want certificates. What I'll do is I'll put into the chat, go away, the link for the exit slip, which I of course appreciate you filling out. I am looking for 3 new clients, either couples or individuals. So at the end of the exit slip is basically an invitation for you to give someone 2 free sessions with me. And that can be you, I don't care. But I am looking for people who say things like, oh my God, I'm so bad at money, or I've got this great job and I do all the right things, but I'm still not happy. And there's emergency after emergency after emergency. So, you know, in our work through these classes, we very rarely talk about money, but I am actually a financial coach. We just talk about the soft skill stuff. So yeah, I've got I've got 2 couples and an individual about to graduate. So I am looking for 3 new clients. So I appreciate referrals. It kind of sucks to refer to me. But hopefully this may be, if you are giving someone 2 free sessions with me, hopefully that will make it easier on all of us. Because I know, like, hey, you're real bad at money, you should go talk to Hannah. That's probably not going to work. So, but nobody ever calls me. So yeah, I'm good on time, so I can hang out if you guys have questions, if you want to. There goes Jessica. If you need anything from me. So any other comments or observations, Traylene?
I don't think so. And stuff. So I'll fill out the exit slip. I do have since she's gone, one thing, I heard back from Habitat of Humanity.
Okay.
So I